Hey everybody, Dr. G here. I'm a clinical and forensic psychologist as well as a body language expert, and today we're going to be analyzing the behavior and body language of Sarah Boone. Sarah Boone was recently found guilty for the murder of Jorge Torres after locking him in a suitcase. What we're going to be looking at today is her sentencing. Before we get started with this, a couple of quick things. One, I wanted to make sure you know this is not a psychological evaluation of any kind. These are just my opinions. In addition to that, I do want to remind you to like and subscribe if you want to see more content just like this. All right, let's go. So where we're going to start today is right before the victim impact statements by Jorge Torres' daughter. She's going to be coming in virtually. Let's watch how her body posture changes.
Mr. Owens, due to the fact that the victim...
So if you look right here, you can see that her attorney is sitting close to the table. She's sitting up straight, fairly close to the table as well.
His daughter is having difficulties with...
And then you hear Jorge Torres' daughter is starting to come in. You see how much distance she's creating. When the victim impact statements are being said, she's scooting back. She's creating emotional distance. Now, she actually does this for people that are on her side as well, but she is creating emotional distance between what's being said and her body language. She's scooting back. We oftentimes see this in interrogations. We see this very frequently during victim impact statements. So what you're seeing is her disconnecting.
Is that her, Anna Victoria Torres?
Yes, sir.
That being said, she does appear to be looking at the victim, so she is paying attention. She's just disconnected from it.
Is that it? Is that who it is? All right, ma'am, good afternoon. Can you hear us?
Now we're going to skip to the end of this victim impact statement.
Thank you.
Anything further?
No other impact statements, Your Honor.
Thank you. Any other witnesses or evidence at this point in time state?
No, Your Honor.
All right.
Now, one thing you're noticing is she basically hasn't moved, and this remains true through many of the other victim impact statements, even for people that are on her side, so to speak. So if you wondered why she kept that posture, why she stayed a bit distant during people against and for her, is that it's a way of maintaining control. The less you give people, the less you express, the less they can read you, the less that they can glean from that. So it is a way to just assert control over and over again by giving people very little. Now we're going to watch Sarah Boone providing her own statement.
Sarah Boone.
Now, this is unlike a trial, so you're allowed to...
You can see her twitching her mouth back and forth a lot. We have lots of nerves in the mouth. If you've seen my videos before, you'll know I talk oftentimes about how that helps us manage stress. So there's probably a certain degree of stress that comes with this, probably a degree of anger, maybe some excitement that comes with providing her own statement. Probably not much in the way of anxiety. She doesn't come across that she feels very anxious about many of these things, but there probably is stress.
to speak in a narrative form, as well as I understand you have taken some...
Now, you see a quick adjustment right there. You see her scooting forward a little bit. Now, that shows that for her, she wants to be more connected in this moment. She is leaning back a little bit, creating a little bit of that distance, but she actually is scooting her chair forward. She didn't really need to scoot it forward. So that does show that she's trying to connect, that she feels like this statement is important.
A letter that you want to read from, and then you want to speak to the court after that.
Yes.
Why don't you go ahead and get...
Now, you're seeing a lot of blinking right now. It's another part of what comes with a lot of stress. And then as soon as she started to talk, you see the eyebrows raised. That means she actually wants you to pay attention to what she's saying. We oftentimes raise our eyebrows to bring attention to our face. That's what she's doing right here.
Why don't you go ahead and get started?
This is actually an edited version of...
Hold on a second.
All right, so this is actually an edited version. She does put a lot of qualifiers and things. This is another way to assert control. This is not the exact statement I wanted to make. This is an edited version. She's known for writing letters. She's sent quite a few to judges. She's gone through a lot of attorneys. So her saying this is not exactly surprising. It's pretty much on brand with the other kinds of interactions she's had so far.
Hold on a second.
And there she was scooting forward again, really a way for her to try to make sure she's connecting as much as possible when she expresses all this.
I had a lot to say. I've had a lot of time to think about things, and I didn't really know how to put it on paper, and I didn't know how much I could say or how little I should say. So What I have here is, like I said, an edited version. But I would like to read the more
There she is reiterating again that this is edited. That's another way to maintain control.
version. But I would like to read.
And then she licked her lips after saying it was an edited version. Probably stresses her out. She doesn't seem to like the fact that this is an edited version.
The more important parts that I feel that everyone should know that wasn't said in my actual trial.
And then she looks at the camera after this. So I know I'm pausing a lot, but she's doing a lot right now. So I want you to watch this right here.
That I feel that everyone should know that wasn't said in my actual trial.
So when she said wasn't said in my actual trial, she looks at the camera because she does think about the audience at home, the audience beyond the courtroom. That's part of what she did during the trial. It seems to be something that she's still doing.
But I would like to read the more important parts that I feel that everyone should know that wasn't said in my actual trial. And on top of what I have on paper, I have, this is just the tip of the tip of the tip of the iceberg.
There's a lot of emotion under the surface here. You can see her shaking her head when she's talking. You can see the energy starting to build up. She does not seem to like the fact that this is an abridged version of what she wanted to say. I am guessing that one of her attorneys probably said you need to keep it shorter or just talk about the important stuff or something like that. And that seems to really be bothering her because she seems to want to cover so much.
Trial. And on top of what I have on paper, I have, this is just the tip of the tip of the tip of the iceberg. So I wanted to read this, and then, if I may, I would like to address everyone in my apology on top of my statement.
Now you see her chin right here. This is a defensive posture, keeping our chin low. It protects our neck, which is a very vulnerable place. And she oftentimes sits with her chin up much higher. So this, as she's reading this, seems to be something that she feels a little bit defensive about. She feels like she needs to be in a defensive posture.
You may proceed, ma'am.
In my wisdom and with all of my repairs, then, now, and ongoing, God is, has been, and will always be my artisan. All of my gold is forgiveness. This has held me together, made me shine brighter, and overcome the damage caused by Jorge Torres, the Torres family, the justice system, Orange County Corrections Department, social media, scoundrel detectives, infamy, defamation, ongoing constitutional rights violations, second-degree murder, forced into being pro se.
Okay, now let's jump back for a second here and listen how this starts. Because she's talking about a list of grievances that she has, essentially.
We shine brighter and overcome the damage caused by Jorge
The damage caused by, and the first thing she says is
Torres, the Torres family, the
Jorge Torres and the Torres family. So what she is putting at the top of her list of what's been damaging to her, it's Jorge Torres and his family. A pretty strong way to start your own statement.
Forgiveness is not an attempt to change or forget who, what, or how you've lived through to be so gold, but an act of grace, humility, and considerable self-compassion to be set free from sorrow.
So you can hear how much pressure is in her voice. There does seem to be a lot of intensity behind it.
And when you forgive, you heal. And when you heal, you move forward. My goal begins with Jorge Torres, and every time he slapped me, kicked, punched, spit on, stabbed, choked, laughed at, pushed, pulled, dragged, whipped, tripped, stole from, lied, terrorized, threatened, humiliated, forced, degraded, made me cry. Every time he tried to end me, defeat, or destroy. I forgive George for beating me senseless, for trying to sleep because I had to go to work or my son's field trip the next day, for ruining my deceased family's heirlooms, traditions, and keepsakes, my son's furniture, destroying the television we watched together, for wrecking our townhome by breaking windows.
In my experience, these types of statements don't tend to be very effective during the sentencing phase. This was already litigated during the trial itself, so going over this in this way is probably not going to help her.
Punching holes in the walls and doors, ramming his entire body into glass doors, kicking in my front and back door over and over and over. For holding me hostage on weekends my son was supposed to come over by keeping my keys around his neck, my phone in his crotch, and a butcher knife stuck in the middle of the table.
In terms of her body language right now, she's really not showing much. This is more just her reading off a narrative. You're not seeing any real emotion in her face. You mainly hear it in her voice.
As a warning not to ask anything or try to leave. For stabbing me in the leg and not letting me call 911 for an ambulance or seek help, where I nearly bled to death until I concocted a lie to save him from being arrested. For destroying my phone with a hammer because my son called. For me experiencing ever being arrested, and after today.
Going through this once again is a way to assert control. They had a trial for this, and people made a decision based on what they heard during that trial, but she wants to relitigate it all when she has the opportunity to show that she's had growth, to show that she's learned something, and she's not taking the time to do that right now.
Prison. For causing me so much trauma and pain, mentally, physically, emotionally, I had to be hospitalized more than once. For destroying my reputation and integrity, for my M for murderer scarlet letter.
So she's saying that she has this scarlet letter, this M for murder scarlet letter, and in other words, saying it isn't her fault. And that's not what you want to hear when you're preparing to sentence somebody. She has to be able to accept some degree of responsibility, which we still haven't heard yet. Right now, she's just gone off a laundry list of grievances that she has about various people, particularly Jorge Torres, obviously. But we haven't heard anything so far that suggests there's real self-reflection or anything that's been learned from this.
Talk to other people, spend time with my son, have a job, friendships, simply go to the bathroom with the door closed, or go to sleep soundly or comfortably. I forgive George for lying, for him trying in so many ways, so many times, to end me with his terrifying love. I also forgive the Torres family, his mother and father foremost, also his 2 ex-wives and daughters.
So her providing forgiveness to the Torres family is really wild. That the idea that she thinks that that's a good idea, or that that's what would somehow get her a lesser sentence, assuming that that was the goal here, is really mind-boggling to me.
I forgive them for caring too late. I hope they all ask themselves while quiet and comfortable in bed at night the uneasy question, what could I have done to stop this from happening to both of them? And after all the time Sarah tried to, by asking for help from all of us and so many times. Another great contributor of my gold is social media, with its greed, insensitivity, deception.
Watch her eyebrows right here.
Asking for help from all of us and so many times. Another great contributor of my gold is social media, with its greed, insensitivity.
So the insensitivity, there seems to be some actual anger around that. She really doesn't seem to like social media a whole lot.
Deception, obvious exploitation, and advantageous gain from my criminal case as a whole, and for sentencing me by anticipation as a result of ignorance and hate. Social media has made me a pariah. It has caused great oppression and undeniable disadvantages, especially by broadcasting and manipulating my cases online. In my criminal case, as a result, my opportunities to be given a fair, proper, and uninfluenced, successful conclusion was heavily depleted and poisoned.
So I've heard defense attorneys use this same type of argument, the idea that social media has somehow poisoned jurors, or somehow it's affected their ability to have clear judgment. I think the reality is, if you're a juror and you are in a courtroom and you sit through and listen to all the evidence, anything you've heard on social media goes away very quickly. Anything that you think or if you had any preconceptions about what the trial was going to be like, it's a grave and serious matter. I genuinely do not believe that social media has any bearing or impact on the verdicts that are met in any of these trials. I genuinely believe that. I think it has no impact. Not next to no impact. I don't think it has any impact at all.
Fair, proper, and uninfluenced, successful conclusion was heavily depleted and poisoned. I forgive them. In the end, I forgive myself for not choosing my life sooner, for not being more brave, vigilant, bolder, and outspoken.
So she's going through a laundry list of grievances and framing it as though it's forgiveness. I don't think that any judge is going to listen to this and feel sympathy or be persuaded by this. And it's remarkable to me that she didn't seem to have the insight to realize this, as she apparently wrote an abridged version, because there's nothing about this that suggests deep levels of self-reflection, deep levels of regret, or anything that you need to see to know that somebody is not a danger to others, or that they actually understand what they've done.
Stronger, mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. For being hopeless, desperate, simple-minded, weak, and inexperienced.
So I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. A lot of it's repetitive, her talking basically about how she should get forgiveness for all the various things that she's done.
And you can survive. In my soft-spoken conclusion, I ask this.
It's interesting that she describes her own conclusion as soft-spoken. That's sort of fascinating to me.
Would I be the darling mother, celebrated woman of the year, if it were I who died? How many daughters, mothers, sisters, aunts, grandmothers, nieces, and friends have been because they did? I am a survivor.
So if you can see when she was going through this part, she's actually looking out at the audience, looking at various people there. So that shows that she wants this part to have more of an impact.
There's nieces and friends have been because they did. I am a survivor.
Because generally speaking, she's just been reading. But for her, she really wants this to have an emotional impact. It goes to show how she expects it to be received.
Learn to do good, seek justice, rebuke oppressors, defend the fatherless, plead for the widow. Isaiah 1:17, all-encompassing, protect the abused.
Ms. Boone, is that the end of your written statement?
Yes.
Now,
Now you see her squint afterwards. So now she's done with it. We oftentimes squint when we hear things that we don't like. So it seems like to me that being asked if that was the end of her statement was something that she didn't particularly like hearing.
Boone, is that the end of your written statement?
Yes.
Now, gathering your thoughts, did you want to make an oral statement?
I do.
All right, would you do that now?
Yes, please. My statement, my verbal statement is primarily to the Torres family, to the judge, to his daughters.
So you see this. This is two things that it can mean. One is it can be a way to manage stress. Another, it can be to not say certain things. I don't think that's the case here. To me, it seems more like it's a way to manage stress.
To his daughters. I know you all know who I really am and that I did care for George and that I do still love George. I know you know that we had very many good days.
That phrase, good days, if you look at her interrogation, that's the same way that she described the day that he died, is we had a good day. She said it the exact same way. So that must have been something that she says often.
I know you know that we had very many good days. And I take offense to the statement of being said that this is just for a moment. Right now with me here in the courtroom in front of you all, this is just for a moment. But the moments before that, in order for me to be here, is...
I'm not sure I understand what she's talking about. Maybe it was mentioned earlier, the whole just for a moment thing. This is going right over my head.
endless. It's everlasting. The scars that I have on the inside, my outside scars have healed except for my stab wound. But this has changed me as a person to see things differently and to understand things differently and to not be weak and just try to protect yourself.
So you see the way that she's looking around. This is the way we look when we're trying to process information. So I do think that she's coming up with this right now off the cuff, basically. So this does seem to be her reaching the logical parts of her brain, trying to figure out what to say. The tough part about this is that she just got done saying that the Torres family were some of her oppressors or some of the people that have done her wrong. So it's just such a strange juxtaposition to be saying that in her written statement and then be trying to speak to them like this here. It's hard to imagine what she's thinking right now.
Yourself and forever, regardless of the time that I may receive from today, I forever will have this experience. I forever will have Jorge Torres with me in my heart, in my mind, my body, and my soul. As he and I used to say that we were one soul split into two bodies. This is not just for a moment. It may be for everyone in this courtroom, but when I leave, this is forever. When you all leave, that this is forever. This is forever for everyone here and those who it matters to most. I am one of those who will experience this forever.
Something she also seems to do in her writing and the way she speaks is she wants to get deep. She wants to get profound, maybe. I'm not sure if that's specifically her goal, but it seems like it. And then it makes it kind of not make sense. It makes it a little bit less coherent. So rather than just addressing things directly, she's trying to make a statement or trying to use flowery language, and I don't think it works very well right here.
I am one of those who will experience this forever. I'm sorry. Words do not define my shame.
Now, that expression right there, it's almost like surprised that she's saying the word shame. That somehow that came to her, and there's a big emotional burst right there. You see the eyes rising up, the way that her mouth's positioned. This actually looks like surprise.
And I don't know what else it is that I can say and convey to the Torres family how this happened. The ifs and whys and how really don't matter. It happened, and I'm sorry.
That would have been a much better written statement than everything else that she went through.
Words cannot describe. And I hope that everyone can forgive me, the Torres family most of all, and his daughters, because I know what he meant to them. And I don't think that anybody ever understood what he meant to me and I to him. And I ask for forgiveness.
So that, like 15 seconds right there, genuinely would have been a much more impactful statement had she just said that.
Just proceed to argument.
Okay. All right. Once Ms. Booth's seated, you can proceed with your argument, either Mr. J or Mr. Cacciatore.
Now we're going to jump to where the judge actually provides his sentence.
The arguments of the state and the arguments of the defense. Court pronounces sentence as follows. Ms. Boone, court sentences you to life in the Department of Corrections with credit time served that Madam Clerk will provide to you momentarily. There are also court...
So as you can see right here, you're getting essentially no response, and this is not uncommon for people that want to be in control, and this is oftentimes the case for people who find themselves in this kind of situation. They don't want to show you anything. At this point, they probably feel very frustrated. I'm sure they feel very stressed when they hear it, but essentially, they don't want to give you anything. They don't want to let anybody see their reaction. So at this point, you're getting very little to no reaction, and that's not exactly surprising.
Costs and costs of prosecution, which Madam Clerk will give you the totals of momentarily. Due to the court levying a life sentence, the court is inclined to liquidate those.
The one thing you are seeing is a lot of blinking, which oftentimes denotes stress.
From the state.
No opposition, Your Honor.
All right. Madam Clerk, if you could please give us the credit time served and have the courtroom deputy provide you the paperwork because you've been incarcerated.
So you can see her pinching her arm, stroking her arm right now. That is a way to help us calm ourselves down. So even though she isn't showing you much, obviously, as anybody would be that just got a life sentence, she does seem to be experiencing a lot of stress, and she is doing things to help calm herself down.
For the last 58 some odd months, the court is going to declare that you are indigent in this matter.
So we'll go ahead and wrap things up here. Her behavior was pretty much what you would expect. The statement that she provided, particularly the written statement, was mostly reflective of the fact that she's angry and that she blames a lot of other people for what's happened. And she has a lot of anger towards social media, towards the Torres family, and then focused on forgiveness, but it didn't really seem like she was focusing on forgiveness. It really seemed a lot more like she was focusing on a list of grievances. Hopefully this has helped you better understand some of the behavior and body language that we saw today. If you have any other thoughts or questions, please let me know in the comments below. Last thing before we get finished up is I do want to remind you to like and subscribe if you want to see more content just like this. All right, thanks for watching.